Have you checked the children?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
I mean, Fuego? Yeah.
And technically, the quarantine has ended here in Arizona, so Fuego and I are a little bit closer. I know technically there's still social distancing asked and everything, but Fuego and I aren't kissing. We're not talking at each other. We're talking at you guys. We're not touching, you know. We're basically kids in the back seat in the 80s going, I'm not touching you. Anyway, we're here to discuss, guys.
Speaking of the 80s.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, yeah, what a
segue.
See, and that's why I employ him for zero money. All right, so here we go, guys. We're here to talk about a documentary that was a crowdfunded documentary, very high-profile crowdfunded documentary.
British-American kind of bringing the forces together.
And I supported it. I did purchase the Blu-ray, and I finally got it. Woo! So we are finally going to discuss In Search of Darkness, a journey into iconic 80s horror. I was trying to read it while I'm doing that. But this is a 4.5-hour documentary, you guys, of the ilk of Never Sleep Again. In my opinion, what might be the best documentary of all time, that 4-hour Freddy documentary about the entire series.
It's on Shudder.
Love that documentary. This is 4.5 hours focusing on the 80s year by year. And I had no idea that's what they were going to do. They'll literally go 1980, here we go. Yeah. Zoom in on some movie in a plethora of other movies from that time, and we're going to focus on that movie. And then zoom out, zoom in on another movie, focus on that movie. Zoom in, zoom out, focus on another movie. You do like 4 or 5 movies per year. Boom. You have 10 years worth of that. You have actresses, or you have actors, you have directors, you have producers, you have special effects people, you have
even critics like Phil Noble Jr. from Fangoria. I mean,
you even have Dead Meat James from YouTube. You have all kinds of people chiming in on the classics in this 4.5-hour documentary. And for overall thoughts, I'm going to say that I did really enjoy it. It is very much a comprehensive documentary of 80s horror. However, I also have to say, at 4.5 hours with this format, it can get a bit repetitive.
That's what I said too.
It can get a bit repetitive, but, well, and not only that, the other sort of problem is there's a number of movies that you see next to the movies that get zoomed in on that they don't cover. Yeah, so I'm like, oh, I wish we would hear about that one, you know?
Certain purists will be like, why didn't they talk about this film?
Exactly,
and so on.
exactly.
I had a few myself.
Exactly. So that's my overall thoughts. It is still a very well-made, well-produced, well-directed documentary about horror. I'm happy to have it in my collection, and it is one that I will revisit. You know, maybe not on an annual basis, maybe on a you know, every 5 years I'll toss it in, something like that. I'm gonna, well, anyway, I'm not gonna talk about that yet officially. But there might be some youth eventually that I can share this with. So, you know, this is it's a documentary that I'm happy to have. Although, while it is comprehensive, if we're really gonna do the ultimate 80s documentary, this should have been about 8 hours and should have covered all those other movies as well.
True. You know,
that's my overall thoughts. It's a bit unfair, but I'm saying it's a great documentary for what it is. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is one that I think, not to give the Shudder shout out or anything like that, but watching something where it is just broken off into segments, because I watched this in all one sitting, man.
Did you really?
I watched it all in one sitting.
Oh, dude, no. I watched it in like 5 sittings.
And that's where I'm thinking if it had been broken off into separate segments.
I watched it as episodes.
I covered maybe like 2 years at a time.
Yeah.
You know, I think that probably would have worked a little bit better for this, because it is kind of an arduous watch, and the fact that it really, as far as the presentation process goes, it is really just zooming in on the cover art and then segueing into insightful interviews, you know, mind you. I mean, you have so many people from, you know, you've got everyone from John Carpenter to Elvira is there, to Don Mancini, Heather Langenkamp. I mean, you have pretty much every big name, and this is the sort of project where you would probably get a few interviews from prominent people, and it would snowball downhill, and you just keep getting more and more and more. And I think I remember us even reading about that for this. So comprehensive, yes, but it could have been more comprehensive, and I think maybe breaking off into certain segments and trying to do a series as opposed to make such a massive film might have been a little bit better, because I'm sure there were interviews left on the cutting room floor. You know, I mean, maybe even a few films that were mentioned by certain interviewees that just didn't make the cut. But as a whole, this was super enjoyable. I liked it better than Survival of the Film Freaks, I think was one that we saw last year. You know, much more
at the festival, right?
Yeah, that was at the festival last year. So much more comprehensive in that regard. And I mean, one of the best of this ilk, covering, I mean, probably, at least for me, my favorite decade for horror. There's some 70s apologists, there's some 90s apologists, but
80s was it.
80s had just the perfect balance of the cheese, the creativity, the improvements in practical effects.
It created everything I love, Freddy and Chucky.
Yeah, I mean, franchises. This is where we created the most iconic franchises of all time, aside from maybe like Alien in '79 for me, but that's really, there's not a lot of others.
Well, I mean, technically Halloween was 78.
Yeah, but for me, I mean...
No, I agree. Again, Freddy and Chucky and Jaws was 75, but
yeah,
still.
And yet they were still making more Jaws movies in the
80s,
80s. It was like even the franchises, and they talk about many of them in this film. Franchises from the 70s saw their resurgence in the 80s. You know, Season of the Witch basically killed the Halloween franchise, and they talk about the return of Michael Myers. And so, yeah, and they also have Atkins on there talking about Season of the Witch and how maybe if it was rebranded as something different, it would have been more successful. So
acting isn't really a factor in this. You just have the stories and the actors and the producers and everyone involved that are actually talking about all this, and they're all engaging. I thought it was well selected, well interviewed, well presented.
It's all passionate discussion too.
Indeed.
You can tell that there is just a sentimental affinity, and they just hold that time where they became so prominent in high regard. Or if it's people that are younger, because we do have a few younger people who have just covered this stuff as opposed to being in the trenches creating it, and they still, I mean, just that love comes off as being just very genuine and real, you know, throughout the entirety.
Yeah. And then the actual presentation of the documentary. Again, documentaries can live and die by their presentation. Luckily, we've watched a lot of really good ones. The Kane Hodder documentary was a good one.
Yeah.
The Tom Savini documentary, I'm
Scream
almost
Queen.
done with. Good.
Scream
Queen was a great documentary we reviewed recently. This is a well-presented, you know, bells and whistles documentary, and I think, you know, it's one that a lot of others can aspire to be like. So on that level, I think this film was very successful as well.
Yeah, and getting the licensing, obviously, to actually show the film clips and stuff like that. I've seen some, you know, lower tier, not as certified, and, you know, I don't know, getting the approval of a lot of those films to actually showcase the footage. Showcasing the footage a lot of the time is so important, just to give that visual recollection and, you know, just, I don't know, visual aid, especially for the, like, you could show this to a kid and he would just be, you know, if he hasn't watched a lot of these films, he's just like making a list, you know, on his like little tablet or whatever.
Dude, I was adding to my list.
I was too. There was a few that I haven't revisited in a long time, and there's
a
others
few
that
I
I
haven't
just
seen
never
at all.
watched.
Yeah.
Society, which is one on this that I have never watched.
That's actually that was
a
a patron request from Sam. So that is now an official patron request. I can finally watch it. Yeah. No, I'm excited to watch that. Yeah. No, I added a few to my list that Night of the Comet. I've never seen Night of the Comet.
Oh, that's the girl with the huge hair and the
yeah. I've never seen it.
That's
so
another one
I need
that
to watch that one. So
yeah, and they talk about chopping mall.
I like that even the actors in that movie were like
Barbara Crampton.
Yeah, the poster wasn't anything like what was in the movie, so it didn't make any sense. But like, I like that kind of stuff.
No, dude, they talk about Larry Cohen's Q the Winged Serpent, so there is like deep diving at times.
Which I also have over there that I've never seen. You know, it's one of the Blu-rays I have in my list o classic horror that I haven't watched. Motel Hell. They focused on Motel Hell, and I haven't seen that either.
And I think they did talk Brain Damage at one particular point, didn't they?
I haven't watched it. I'm waiting for you to loan me yours because I've been waiting to watch it.
I love Brain Damage, man. It's from the guy who did Basket Case, Frank Henenlotter.
I think that's on Shudder or Prime as well. I need to. If it's the same, I'll watch it on there.
The shit, man. But... And I mean, Michael Moriarty, who's in Q the Winged Serpent, that guy is just great. He's in the stuff.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately, In Search of Darkness is a very successful documentary, guys. If you haven't gotten your hands on it, I definitely recommend trying to do so. I don't know how you can get it at this point.
I mean, maybe consult your eBays and Amazon marketplaces, but I know they sold out on the Blu-rays. They did an initial run on, it was either Indiegogo, and then they did a Kickstarter afterwards, or maybe it was the other way around.
Yeah.
But yeah. So they crowdfunded it twice, and you know.
And they actually we should say, since we're reviewing it, they have a current crowdfund for In Search of Tomorrow.
Yeah, which is the
which
sci-fi
is the sci-fi
equivalent.
one.
Nice.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So they're doing a 4+ hour sci-fi movie documentary focusing on, of course, it'll be Terminator, Aliens, Predator. It'll have that
Probably
stuff.
Dune will be in
Dune,
there.
yeah, all that stuff will be a part of that. I haven't actually backed that one yet, but I do plan to because this was it was worth the money. You know, I spent
You know how
$30.
much I love my
think.
sci-fi, man. I may have to go toss some cash at them.
Indeed. So that's going to do it for our review of In Search of Darkness. Let us know what your thoughts are if you've watched it in those comments down below, or if you're going to go seek it out, let us know that as well. While you're down there, click the like button and subscribe to make sure you don't miss other reviews going forward. And if you want, we also have our link to our Patreon, where you can actually request movies like that for us to review in the very near future, or
Give us
do
the 80s
commentaries
we've
for.
forgotten about.
All that kind of stuff. So until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.